with the overwhelming magnitude of global warming, it's easy to feel powerless. But what would happen if enough of us took power literally into our own hands? What if we all became power stations? On a hot, hot day in 2006, one man began a local revolution when he was jolted into attempting exactly that.
I was on surf patrol at the Tathra Surf Lifesaving Club. It was New Year's Day, so I was expecting it to be an extremely quiet morning. So I took along a book to read, which just happened to be Tim Flannery's The Weathermakers. About 10 o'clock in the morning, a hot westerly wind hit the surf club, and it was profound. It was like standing in front of a hairdryer.
That day, the thermometer reached 42 degrees, 4 degrees hotter than ever recorded on this southern New South Wales beach. It had a profound effect on local Dr Matthew Nott.
I'm not a greenie or a radical or anything like that. I'm a very conservative consumer, or I was until New Year's Day last year, and it's changed my life.
There's a word for what Dr Nott decided he had to do. It's called microgeneration.
Microgeneration is a means whereby we as individuals, through our homes or in other ways, can actually generate energy which we use, but also then potentially sell that energy back to energy providers.
It's a shift in thinking from the traditional model of big centralised power stations. But it's being taken very seriously in the UK, where Nick Rowley was formerly climate change advisor to the Prime Minister.
They think that in the next 20 years, that decentralised energy, of which microgeneration is a part, could form around about a third of the energy needs of a city the size of London.
And by mid-2006, Dr Nott was raring to give it a go for himself. First, he made his house energy efficient. Then, power station DIY.
Those 6 panels are generating about 70% of our household needs. What we're hoping to do is install a wind turbine next month, which will fill in that 30% gap.
And this is what it's all about, the moment when your power starts feeding back into the grid.
Oh, it's a terrific feeling to be providing our own electricity. The first thing I wanted to do after we'd boiled the kettle was to boil it again.
But that was the easy bit. To really make an impact, Dr Nott knew he somehow had to convince the whole community to join him.
John, Matthew Nott here. How are you? I've got a bit of a plan. Well, I got on the phone and I rang everyone I knew and a lot of people who I didn't know, planning a huge human sign on Tathra Beach. 3 weeks later, we had 3,000 people lined up on Tathra Beach. We've come up with a community target for tackling climate change. That's 50-50 by 2020. What that means is a 50% reduction in the consumption of energy and a 50% production of energy from renewable energy sources by the year 2020.
That's when the local microgeneration revolution really started to take off. First to fire up was the Tathra Surf Club, with solar panels and a mini wind turbine, tastefully decorated in surf club colours.
Had calls from fire brigades and local schools in the area. The targets have been agreed to by the community of the Bega Valley. We've also managed to get the Eurobodalla Council to agree to those targets.
If enough households and businesses sign on, eventually they could displace a small power plant. And there's another big advantage to mass microgeneration. To understand it, let's meet the real power network in our lives, the grid.
The grid is basically a network of poles and wires which connect generation and with areas of electricity demand. which are the cities and towns and industrial areas.
The trouble is, to avoid blackouts, we have to build our networks big enough to cope when electricity demand is at its peak. And when is peak demand? Typically hot summer afternoons, when we all turn on our air conditioners. As it happens, that's right when solar panels produce most power, reducing the need to spend on an ever-expanding grid.
Australia is committed to spending $24 billion over the next 5 years for poles and wires. It's huge, and it's one thing that's really hard to factor into the equation at the moment, because there's no way of capturing that benefit when you're trying to make the case for microgeneration. There's no financial way of capturing the avoided need for all this extra spending on infrastructure.
But if microgeneration is so wonderful, how come so few Australians have taken it up? Incredibly, just 4,000 homes are feeding into the grid.
The costs for installing photovoltaic cells was about $17,000, and we got a $4,000 rebate to bring it down to about $13,000. That's fine for me. I'm in a privileged position where I can afford the amount of money that it costs to install solar photovoltaic cells, but not everyone can.
At the moment, individuals bear the brunt of microgeneration costs, and it takes more than 20 years to return the investment. So what would it take to spread the power from a community to a nation? One option is to just pay for it. The federal government's impressive new Solar Cities program will get around 6,000 more homes feeding to the grid. But to replace a power station, you need $1 million. How do you get there? Well, there is another way. In Germany, the government has adopted what's known as a feed-in tariff. It works like this. In Germany, when I draw from the grid, I pay, let's say, 10 cents for the electricity. But when I put back into the grid, I get paid 40 cents. It's a nice little earner, and it means that my home power station pays for itself in under 10 years. And the figures speak for themselves. While Australian microgeneration is growing at a modest 15% per year, in Germany, it's a rocketing 50%. Over 40 countries have now adopted feed-in tariffs, and the South Australian government is just about to. Meanwhile, Dr Nott isn't waiting around for a higher power, though he has just recruited one.
I had a chat to a bishop. The bishop's idea was to get every place of worship set up with renewable energy. What a great statement that'd be, to get a solar panel onto every place of worship in the country.
Our species has an epic archetypal task ahead to avoid dangerous climate destabilisation. Microgeneration won't get us there by itself, but then again, no single thing will.
I really feel like there is a sweeping change coming through the community, and it's terrific to be a part of it.